is a game that has been around ever since February 1996. It started with Pokemon Green and Red versions for those who lived in Japan. Eventually, this reached out to the US and was given life to the Nintendo GameCube as Pokemon Red and Blue, which only continued to expand and grow from the multitude of different generations. There are a lot of aspects to consider in more recent generations, such as competitive tournaments and custom challenges by content creators alike. There are still parts that make everything so mysterious about them, such as potential and how to expand on them. But I thought I could take it a step further and become an educator on how Pokemon works as a whole to the best of my ability. So, how about we start with the first question and ask ourselves, what makes a Pokemon? Let's start simple and have a look at the 5 things that makes a Pokemon what they are. They are types, stats, evolutions, abilities, and movesets. Each Pokemon is different on that note, so how about we use a classic Pokemon that many people would be familiar with? Pikachu. Let's start with talking about the types first and see how they impact them. A type of a Pokemon can depend on the moves that they can learn and how they can take hits in battle against specific moves, which I will explain later. There are currently 18 types in the games, and they each have their own gifts which they can use. In our example, Pikachu is an electric type and doesn't have a secondary typing. Some Pokemon such as Bulbasaur is a poison and grass type which can really affect the battlefield in different ways. The type of a Pokemon also decipher how to make use of the moves it has and make them as powerful as possible. A Pokemon's stats will depend on how it interacts with the battle. Let's have a look in closer detail. It ranges from HP, or health points, attack, defense, special defense, and speed. To start off, let's go over HP. HP is how much health a Pokemon has, and it's the only bar that is available for both players to see at all times. If a Pokemon's HP is reduced to 0, the Pokemon will faint and is unable to be used for the rest of the battle. Moves or status conditions such as Poison will wear them down and eventually defeat them. Some moves such as Morning Sun can heal your Pokemon as well if you have it available to use. Attack, or to be more accurate, physical attack is measured by how well your Pokemon can use physical moves in battle. In generations 4 and over, moves were split according to how they were used. So in this case, moves that are like a tackle or a kicking action would be considered physical. In prior generations, very select types were counted as physical only, meaning that every move in that category were calculated with attack. Defense, or physical defense, is how well a Pokemon will take a hit from physical attacks. Basically, think of it as your get-out-of-jail-free card when it comes to taking damage from a lot of different moves. Special attack is the opposite to attack, seeing as it counts how well your Pokemon can utilize attacks from a distance, such as a beam or projectile. The types that can specialize with this were a little lesser than their physical counterparts back in Generations 3 and lower, and before Fairy types were released back in Generation 6. Special defense, again, is the opposite to its physical counterpart. It's how one can take a hit from special attacks. This can be changed during the heat of battle, but only with a select few moves. Speed is the last major stat to a Pokemon, and it's what decides the turn order. The higher a speed stat on a Pokemon, the better chance it has of going first. One thing that can happen is that if two Pokemon's speed is tied. To answer, the two Pokemon engage in a coin flip, and the one who wins it will go first. This can decide battles more often than not, and you'd be surprised on how much it can change things. Most Pokemon in the many games can evolve when they reach a certain point in terms of many different factors. Each of them change your Pokemon or playstyle entirely if they were to evolve. There are a multitude of ways a Pokemon will evolve, and I'll explain it the best way I can for you. The most standard way a Pokemon will evolve is through level up. When a Pokemon hits a certain level, such as Bulbasaur evolving into Ivysaur at level 16, their stats boost, and their movesets will change depending on when they evolve. Stone evolutions, such as a Thunderstone to a Pikachu, will evolve them into something much stronger than a fair few Pokemon. There is one major drawback to a lot of them, however, and that drawback is the fact that you are unable to learn new moves more often than not, seeing as they can only learn their moves in their pre-evolution. Friendship evolutions are a bit of a challenge, but can be done with patience. More often than not, the Pokemon who will evolve with this method are baby Pokemon, such as Pichu or Mime Jr. Ever since Generation 4, if specific Pokemon know some moves, then they will naturally evolve and become much stronger as a result. An example of this is Piloswine into Mamoswine after having Ancient Power in its move list and leveling once. Trade evolutions are a new matter in its entirety, seeing as you'd require a second player to do so, but by giving specific Pokemon to another player, you can evolve them. Sometimes people choose not to evolve their Pokemon and keep them in their somewhat weaker states. The main reason for this is in most cases thanks to the fact that they can learn certain moves to use later on and then evolve them. Or they are actually stronger than their evolved versions by some means, such as Scyther being faster than Scizor, its evolved counterpart. The abilities of a Pokemon can vary massively and change the tide of battle to anyone's favor. They can range from minor increases to attack power, or even landing a last-ditch effort on defeating an opponent. Some moves can either be hindered or rendered completely useless thanks to some abilities, such as Clear Bodies on stat moves, or Oblivious ignoring all stat changes on other Pokemon other than itself. There are some abilities that can hurt you as opposed to help, such as Truon or Klutz, but there are some moves that can be used to remove or nullify them entirely, such as Simple Beam or Worry Seed, although there are not a lot of players who make use of this. Pokemon can hugely vary in terms of the moves that it can learn throughout its time of leveling up and traveling with you. A Pokemon can hold a maximum of 4 moves at a time, and when it wants to learn a new move, the player will be asked if they want to forget something. This is where math comes into play as well as strategy. Some people would say no to some of the moves that they would get, seeing as they would not be entirely helpful or they don't apply well with their team. Sometimes it helps if a Pokemon were to wait for a better chance on learning a new move, and they can always learn it again later. It also helps when a Pokemon is able to learn new moves thanks to TMs or HMs, such as Surf or Psychic. So, to recap what we've learned in this session, we talked about the 5 different factors of a Pokemon in its entirety. We went through the basic types, we broke down the stats of one and how they can impact a battle, we talked about the evolutions and how they can change them entirely, we had a brief talk about what abilities can do, and we had to talk about the movesets that a Pokemon can learn as it levels with you. For our next Pokemon educators, we shall be having a look at the beginning of the many different types that are in these games. I hope you'll stick with me until then. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen.